Hello sweet friends, welcome back to another video and a special hello if you are new. Today I'm going to be sharing with you some soft and sweet romance reading recommendations. Romance is one of my favorite genres to read. I adore it, and there is just something so wholesome about reading a really pure-hearted, really sweet romance book. Some of these books are low stakes, some of these are higher stakes, some of these are historical fiction, some of these are kind of fantasy based, some of these are contemporary, some are open door, some are closed door. So hopefully there is something for you on here, or at least a book that you haven't heard of, or an author that you haven't heard of or tried before, and it encourages you to do so. I think that spring and summer are the best time to read romance, and I always get into the mood to do so. So again, I hope that you find something that you can add to your list. I have my little cheat sheet here. I've kind of highlighted and color coded it because I can never remember names half the time, especially in videos. Once I start talking, names fall out of the back of my head. But the first book that I have for you is my personal favorite, Emily Henry, and it is a funny story. It tells the story of Daphne, who is a children's librarian, which is my dream job. She is dating Peter when Peter suddenly breaks up with her and announces that he is getting back together with his childhood best friend named Petra. And Daphne has no choice because she has just been dumped. They were living together. She's in this weird situation financially, and she is kind of forced to move in with Petra's ex-boyfriend Miles, who she dumped for Peter. Miles and Daphne need to kind of cope with seeing their exes now together all over town. Their exes are now engaged. They're invited to their wedding. And in an attempt to cope with the situation that they have found themselves in, they fake date. So they're kind of posting pictures on Instagram. If they bump into the other couple, they're going to act all loved up. And then obviously they realize that they have chemistry and that they have feelings for one another. And it adds the complicated factor to where they're trying to navigate their heartbreak and their feelings for their exes as well. I just love this book. Daphne is one of those characters in literature that make me feel so seen. She is soft and shy, and Miles is someone who is a little bit more messy, a little bit more assertive, and kind of helps Daphne really enjoy her life and to make decisions for her and not necessarily for other people, which kind of help her grow into her own in a way that she's never experienced before. It all takes place, I think, over a summer, and it's Emily Henry. So I mean, it's perfect. I just can't recommend it enough. It's just, again, soft, sweet, cozy, romantic, just anything that you could want from a romance novel. The next book is another one of my all-time favorite books, and it is Drinker of Ink by Shannon Castleton. This is all told within journals, and it follows Vivian, who is a first-generation immigrant. Her parents immigrated to New York from Paris. She is in California in school. She's finishing up her undergrad, and it's also set in the 90s, and that's a really key factor into the book because Vivian is extremely homesick. She is an eldest daughter, and hopefully this is a book for the eldest daughter. She has a lot of anxiety over her family. Her mother had a health scare when Vivian was younger, and Vivian is very afraid that her mother is becoming sick again, and she's so far away, and kind of the communication of the different time zones and trying to communicate with her family about her mom, and she feels like they're being kind of evasive, is really taking a toll on her. She's studying to become a poet, and she wants to run a bakery one day like her aunt does, I believe. And she has a graduate student teaching one of her classes, and his name is Peter, right? Yes. And Vivian and Peter just bond over their shared experiences of kind of being first-generation immigrants or immigrants and their situations with their families. And poems, in baking, and it is just so pure and sweet. But as they're bonding and realizing that they're falling in love, they have those added factors of those things that they bonded over, like their families and how they're going to take care of them and how they could potentially have a relationship with one another and still be there for their families in the way that they feel like they need to be. It's beautiful. I think being told within Vivian's journal is such an intimate experience because you get to know her in such a deeper way. Again, Vivian is just one of those characters in literature that I just feel absolutely seen in. This was a debut novel as well, so I can't imagine how whatever Shannon Castleton is working on, like what's next from her. I will definitely read it, but it is just really, the love between these two characters is just so pure, and their hearts and their desires in life and how they want to be there for one another and be there for their families. It's just a beautiful, wonderful reading experience. This is a book that I read a couple years ago, and I seriously think about it all the time. It's one that I really want to reread, and I don't have a physical copy of it still to this day, and I need that physical copy. Switching gears a little bit, the next book that I have for you is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. This is kind of a fantasy element, but it feels like you're within like a World War I novel, because I do believe that like kind of the war was based off of World War I and like trench warfare. But this follows Iris. She is a reporter at a newspaper, and she kind of has a workplace rival named Roman, and they are reporting on the front lines of war, and there is a war between two gods. So I guess like their kind of country is divided up into different factions, and different factions are kind of ruled by different gods, and then two of these gods are warring because one kind of wants to take over everything. So Iris and Roman are working at a newspaper, and then they are reporting upon the war. Iris is very isolated, very lonely. She comes from a very poverty-stricken family, where Roman is born into a lot of wealth and his family has a lot of influence. Unbeknownst to them, they actually own magic typewriters that were passed down. I don't want to say that. They actually own magic typewriters though, and they are able to communicate with one another. So Iris is writing letters on her typewriter, and she believes that she's kind of writing them to her brother who's on the front lines of the war and she misses, and she's kind of just putting them in her wardrobe, just out of sight, out of mind, just as a way to kind of express herself. And unbeknownst to her, they're actually going to Roman, who is writing back to her. So even though kind of on the surface at work they're rivals, they're kind of forming this relationship and this romance kind of behind the scenes, so to speak. This book was just so beautiful. It is one of the most pure-hearted like romances. Like the love that they feel for one another is just so pure, despite like their circumstances and the war. It's just really beautiful. I really recommend this second book in the duology as well, but I think the second book is a lot more world building, a lot more war based, so you're going to get so much of that really sweet romance in the first book. Next, I have a book that I did mention in my spring TBR, or not my spring TBR, my spring reading recommendations, but it's one of my favorite romance books of all time, so naturally it just had to be incorporated in this video, and it is Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams. This tells the story of Annie. She is a florist in a small town, and she really struggles with dating. She's at an age where she wants to kind of settle down. She wants to get married. She wants to find true love and find someone who she feels is her person and that she can be herself with. She has an older brother and two older sisters. Her older sisters are very close, so she feels kind of out of the loop, whereas her older brother is married and settled down, and she's ready to kind of have those experiences for herself. So she has Will, who is a bodyguard. You kind of meet him in the first book in the Rome, Kentucky series, who's kind of known for being a bit of like a womanizer, and she wants him to teach her how to date. So they kind of begin this, like he's her dating coach, and they go on different dates and put themselves in different situations to where Will has to teach Annie, and sorry if the lighting changed, we had to shut the door. But basically where Will is coaching Annie on dating and how to, you know, find a partner, and they begin to have feelings for each other. It's really sweet because Annie has, kind of similar to like Funny Story, Annie has this shy, again, a character that I feel completely seen by, but personality, this unwillingness to be assertive and to kind of find what she wants in life, where Will is definitely a lot more stoic, and then they kind of counterbalance each other out, where Annie is encouraging Will and allowing Will to have this safe space to be vulnerable, whereas Will is kind of encouraging Annie to step into her own and take charge of her life. All right, the next book that I have for you is kind of similar to the others, and it's another character that I feel really seen by. But, you know, these are my favorite kind of books, so obviously there's going to be some overlap, but it is the Cinnamon Bun Bookstore by Laurie Gilmore. This is the second book, I believe, in the Pumpkin Spice Cafe series. And don't let the fact that it's called the Cinnamon Bun Bookstore make you think that it's a fall book, because I read it during fall. I read it last fall, and it's not set during summer. So do keep that in mind. But it follows Hazel. She is the owner of the bookstore, and she basically keeps finding little notes in books that are in the bookstore, and she feels like these notes are being addressed to her, and they're kind of encouraging her to go on adventures and claim her own life. Noah is a character who's kind of known to be a bit of a womanizer who lives in town. He frequently dates, but he likes Hazel and he's been trying to pursue her. So he's been going to the bookstore and reading books, trying to form a connection with her. So she tells him about the mysterious notes, and he kind of agrees to kind of help her follow that and kind of help her have this great summer. Hazel is nearing the end of her 20s, and she just feels like she is not properly lived. Noah is going to help her do that. They kind of have a little bit of like the forced proximity, a little bit of fake dating with one another, with their community and with their friends. And again, it's just this really beautiful story where you have this more stoic character, this male character who's afraid to be vulnerable, who gets with a character where he feels that he's able to be that way, and then the female character, due to the confidence that the male character is bringing to her, is able to step in and take charge and claim her own life. It is just like my favorite, I guess, trope. I love it, and again, I just feel so seen by those characters and by their love stories. The next book that I have is the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society by Mary Ann Shaffer and Annie Barrows, or Barrows. I didn't know this, but when I was actually looking up the book, that way I could write down like names and have a little bit of like a refresher, because it's been so long since I've read the book. I read it 2 or 3 times though. I didn't know this, but Mary Ann Shaffer actually passed away before she was able to complete the book. And then Annie is Mary Ann's niece, and she's who went in and finished it. And I actually never knew that. And I thought that was just a really sad, but also beautiful little bit of information. And I think it, again, makes Guernsey seem like it kind of highlights it more of a love story, because it is the love story within the novel, but now it's like the love story between an aunt and a niece. I think that's really beautiful. But this is all told within letters, and it follows Juliet after the end of World War II. She was a columnist in World War II, and she wrote a lot of spunky, encouraging morale kind of articles, but she wants to be taken very seriously now that the war is over. And she's kind of seeking out a project that she can write nonfiction wise to really allow her to be like a serious writer. So Dulcie from Guernsey, which is an island off the coast of England, is writing to Juliet and asking her to send books, because Guernsey hasn't recovered from the war in the way other parts of England has. And so Juliet and Dulcie begin this correspondence, and she finds out through Dulcie that he and some members of his communities created the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society as a book club. during the occupation of Guernsey during World War II. And so they begin this correspondence, which leads to Juliet visiting, and it kind of allows her to have this life-changing experience and to see how the war impacted people outside of her community. And again, the love between the two characters is just so pure and wholesome, and they are able to find healing and rebirth within one another, and it is just so beautiful. It is also ultimately a book that is a love letter to book lovers as well. The next book that I have is A Tartan Love by Nichole Van. This is like Romeo and Juliet-esque, and it is set in Scotland, so it follows two characters named Isla and Tavish. They are living in the Scottish Highlands, I think kind of around like the, I don't know, 1800s, maybe somewhere around in there. And their two families are feuding. There is a cemetery kind of in the middle, and Isla and Tavish, I was blending their names together, actually end up meeting there when they are young, because they share a birthday, and they're both there because their mothers have passed away, and they're there to kind of spend their birthdays with their mothers. And every year they kind of meet up there, and then as they get older they start meeting up more and more because they have a really beautiful connection. They want to get married, but they know that they can't ask or seek permission from their families, so they decide to kind of sneak off and get married. And they kind of are found out. They have this big, massive argument, and Tavish goes off to war. So now it is years later. Tavish is coming home. They've kept their marriage mostly a secret, and they have to figure out their feelings for one another and how to potentially dissolve their marriage without their families finding out. And it kind of puts them in really awkward situations that are kind of humorous. But it's just really beautiful. I think that if you love a male character who yearns, Tavish is absolutely like your cup of tea for sure. And it is a closed door romance, but it is one of the steamiest books that I have ever read. Like the kissing is just, it is insane. But this was the first Nichole Van book that I had read, and I love it. I cannot wait to read more from her, and I know that this book is also going to be a series, and I just look forward to reading more of her romances because she executes the story and the build-up just incredibly, incredibly well. I have three more. The next book that I have is Lovely War by Julie Berry. This is set during World War I, and it has Aphrodite, who needs to spin a love story. She needs to tell like this beautiful tale of love so she doesn't face judgment on Mount Olympus. So she tells the story of Hazel and James, and by association she also tells the story of Aubrey and Colette. So Hazel is a pianist and James is a young man who is going to war. They meet, I believe, I can't remember if James is on leave or it's right before he goes away to war. And they meet and they just have this really beautiful connection with one another. And they decide, despite it maybe not being the best decision, but because of their profound connection with one another, they decide to continue writing and meeting up when they can as the war is going on. Hazel goes away to kind of help and volunteer in the war, and through that she meets Colette. They are stationed with some old soldiers, and they are kind of there to help out and to bring morale and bring music. And Aubrey is a young African-American soldier from America who's also stationed there, and it really gives you a lot of insight and information on how African Americans were treated during the war. I mean, for me, it was a commonly known fact that African Americans did fight in every single war that the United States has ever been a part of, but it really was interesting to me that, or like, not interesting, but like it had never occurred to me that they would still, like, I just had never really thought, I guess in my little privilege bubble, that they would have still faced a lot of racism and just horribleness while they were there. So it really brought a lot of perspective there. But obviously, if Aphrodite is telling this as like a pure, selfless, like a beautiful love story, and that's exactly what you get. Again, the love between the two characters is just really pure-hearted. It reminded me so much of Iris and Roman in Divine Rivals, and I really think that if you like Lovely War, then you'll like Divine Rivals, or if you like Divine Rivals, you'll love Lovely War, like one or the other. It's just really beautiful, and it kind of goes into how love is more than just appearances and things like that, and how, you know, at times in relationships and in love, someone, you know, has to be there for the other person, has to be kind of that constant providing source to the other person as well. And I think that's really beautiful. Next, I have a book by Ashtyn Newbold, who is a modern Regency romance writer. I have Mischief and Manors, which I read last summer and loved it. This tells a story of Annette, and she's an orphan and she has 2 younger brothers. They live with an aunt who is really vile, really horrible to them, and she basically is tired of providing for them. So she tells Annette that Annette is of age, so she needs to get married and find a way to provide for her younger brothers, or her aunt is going to basically cast Annette out and put her 2 little brothers into an orphanage. So Annette is kind of being pursued by a local vicar and thinks, okay, well, I'm just going to marry him. I'm going to be unhappy and this is going to be my life, but I will be there to provide for my brothers and kind of save them from this fate. And right before she gets ready to accept that offer from the vicar, she gets a letter from her parents' best friends, inviting them to stay at their manor, which is Kellyway Manor, for the summer. So Annette kind of takes this as an opportunity to run away and have a really beautiful time before she's kind of makes herself be resigned to her fate. While she's there, she encounters Owen, who was kind of a playmate of hers when she was younger due to their parents being friends, and he was quite the mischievous little boy, and Annette doesn't really have the fondest memories of him due to that, and Owen kind of agrees that, or offers to kind of help Annette rear her brothers into being like promising young gentlemen. And through their time together, Annette and Owen begin to fall in love, and it kind of puts Annette in this situation where she has to trust in life and kind of not be as controlled in her decisions as she thought, and whether or not that she can pursue love instead of I guess like responsibility. It's really just beautiful. It's also laugh out loud funny. It's so sweet. I have 2 little nephews, and the 2 little boys in the story just absolutely reminded me of them so much. The last book that I have to share with you is Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. This is like the practice makes perfect, funny story, drinker of ink, cinnamon bun bookstore, but reversed. Our female character is more stoic, more kind of hardened by life, and our male character is more anxiety driven, more shy. And I loved that. I loved that swap on personalities, and I think that's helped this book stick out in my head so much. And I do think that this is my favorite Abby Jimenez book that I've ever read. But it tells the story of Brianna and Jacob. They are both doctors, and Brianna has recently went through a really horrible circumstance. She is getting divorced, and her brother is in kidney failure and needs a kidney. Jacob is new to the hospital that Brianna works in, and she fears that he is going to take this promotion that she wants away from her. So immediately she kind of flags him as this horrible man just coming in, you know, to sweep in and just disrupt her life even more. Whereas Jacob is actually dealing with his own things. His ex is dating his brother, and they are getting married, and he just kind of has his own issues. He has a really horrible experience on his first day. He's dubbed as Dr. Death by the nurses, and he writes a letter to Brianna and kind of tells her and apologizes and kind of explains. So the two of them begin to write little notes together. They have a little shared closet that they go to have lunch in where they can kind of get away from it all, and they begin to bond. They find out that Jacob is a match to give Brianna's brother a kidney, and this is something that he agrees to do because his mother had kidney failure and was saved when he was younger, and he always kind of promised himself that he would provide that opportunity to someone. And he asked Brianna to kind of, as a thank you for giving her brother a kidney and saving his life, if she will agree to kind of date him like fakely and deal with all of the wedding chaos that he is stuck enduring. Again, I think that it's really beautiful because, again, you have this stoic character and this other character becomes a safe place for them to open up and to be vulnerable with. And then you have this shy character who gets to kind of have a new outlook on life and gets to claim life on their own terms. It's just my favorite thing ever. Friends, that sums up some of my favorite soft and sweet, just pure romance books. I love this genre. I actually have more books. I feel like I could definitely eventually make a part 2. So let me know if you would be interested in that. And especially if you have any recommendations for me based upon the books that I've talked about, please let me know because it's just my favorite. And they just always make me happy and put me in a good mood. You know, like I love to read literary fiction and have the feels and the messiness, and I love to read classics, and I love to read, you know, fantasy where it's like high stakes and action and stuff, but coming back to these just really pure love stories of people just making each other better, it's my favorite thing. So if you do have any recommendations, please let me know. But anyway, thank you so much for being here and listening to me babble on about books. I ended up talking way longer than I expected, so I really do appreciate it if you are still here. But yeah, I will see you very soon in another video.